This is Radio Health Journal. I'm Nancy Benson. This week, what America's favorite crossing guard has to say about school zone safety.
I almost have to have eyes in the back of my head so that I can see what everybody in all directions is doing.
The reality of school zone safety when Radio Health Journal returns.
I'm Reed Pence, the producer and host of Radio Health Journal. If you like listening to Radio Health Journal, you'll also like our sister show, Viewpoints, which covers a wide array of topics from education to history to the environment. Here's a preview of what they're covering this week on Viewpoints.
This week on Viewpoints.
You were really glad you had it. I mean, when we had guys with a butcher knife standing us off and being able from 10 or 12 feet away to actually deploy the taser.
The technology and training behind the use of non-lethal weapons. Then,
bullets are flying through storefronts and civilian cars, and over 500 rounds were fired in that intersection.
The story behind the 1980 Los Angeles Norco shootout. I'm Marty Peterson.
And I'm Gary Price. These stories in depth this week on your public affairs magazine, Viewpoints.
Listen to Radio Health Journal and Viewpoints on your favorite radio station. And subscribe and listen anytime on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and Spotify. Also, follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Radio Health Journal.
School's starting soon, and getting ready is occupying many households. There are lots of things to remind kids about, too. For example, you may remember learning to look left, right, left as a kid before crossing the street. But in case you ever forgot on your way to school, there was usually someone there to help you out. Well, one crossing guard in Ashland, Missouri has made such an impact on the Southern Boone School District that he's been voted America's favorite crossing guard.
What I do, more than stand on the corner and assist people across the street, is I'm out in the middle of the street dealing with the traffic congestion in addition to any pedestrians that would be using the crosswalks at this intersection during school time.
Chief Lynn Wolford has been a crossing guard for 5 years and a public servant for more than 40. At a time when the roads are more congested than ever, Wolford dedicates his day to helping all of his pedestrians make smart decisions, no matter what age they may be.
Kids will learn to cross the street with their family, with their parents as they grow. I think people are more attentive, of course, to the younger group and then maybe make the assumption that it's filtered into their little brain now how to do that, but not necessarily true, especially if you just get a group of kids together. So I think it's like any other learning mode, repetition makes it work.
Wolford knows how important it is to ensure pedestrian safety. In 2018, more than 6,200 pedestrians were killed on U.S. roads, according to the Governor's Highway Safety Association. That's the highest number we've seen in nearly 3 decades.
I think we could speculate there's a lot of reasons why that number is going up. One, there's more people who are biking and walking. And second, distraction. And so we have distracted pedestrians and we have distracted drivers, and that could only lead to more collisions as people are putting their eyes somewhere other than the road.
That's Kristen Rosenthal. She's the senior program manager at Safe Kids Worldwide. She says it's not just adults that get distracted when crossing the street.
We did a research study and we did observations at middle schools and high schools, and we found that 1 in 6 middle school students were distracted while crossing the street. So that could have been listening to, have earbuds in, texting, talking on the phone. And it was even higher for high schoolers. It was about 25% we saw were distracted while crossing the street.
And pedestrians being distracted is not the only reason fatalities have increased. Rosenthal says it also has to do with the way people choose to cross the street.
We're talking about not crossing at an intersection, not using a crosswalk, not looking before you cross the street. Simple things that we learn how to cross the street safely as we grow up, but people just tend to not follow the rules as they get older.
Crossing mid-block might not seem like a big deal, especially to older pedestrians who've had a few years of experience when it comes to crossing the street. But Rosenthal explains that using the crosswalk and behaving appropriately at intersections is essential to pedestrian safety, no matter the age.
We know that most child pedestrian fatalities, or really just pedestrian fatalities, are happening at non-intersection locations. So that's crossing mid-block or at a non-designated crossing. When you cross at mid-block, cars are not expecting to see a pedestrian. They're going at higher rates of speed, and it's harder for them and takes longer for them to slow down or stop. So most of the fatalities will happen when you don't cross at a proper intersection or crosswalk that is marked and designated to cross the street.
But what about drivers? Wolford says it's not just pedestrians he has to keep an eye on. Some driving habits are dangerous in the intersection and should be avoided.
Well, there's a few, but most of them involve turning when they're not looking for, if you want to make a right turn on red. Usually that's okay. But in my case, if I'm in the middle of the intersection, I don't want anybody moving without me knowing that. And I have drivers that will say, well, I'm just making a right turn. It's okay if you didn't tell me to go. Well, but I'm checking to see if there's a pedestrian approaching or nearby that might be in danger by that right turn that someone has ropely decided to make without me making sure that it's safe to do so. So that's some of the challenges I have is I almost have to have eyes in the back of my head so that I can see what everybody in all directions is doing. But every now and then it happens. We haven't had any issues with it, but it startles me because something's moving that I didn't tell to move. And then I really don't know if it's a safe move. But the turning movements are the worst.
So what is the safest way for kids to get to and from school? You may be surprised.
When it comes to school transportation, there is a small percentage of kids who walk to school compared to, say, 50 years ago. But walking to school and taking the school bus are the safest modes of transportation. When you drive your kids to school, you're just creating more traffic, and more traffic leads to more incidents. In school parking lots, double parking. That's something else that we looked at. Parents not using the appropriate drop-off and pickup zones and going rogue, and their kid having to run across the street or go through school buses. So it's really important that parents follow the rules of pickup and drop-off, but also encourage their kids to walk, bike, and use public transportation or school bus transportation to get to school.
Transportation is only half the battle in crosswalk safety. It boils down to not just teaching, but showing kids how to be responsible pedestrians and drivers.
What's really important for adults is for us to be good role models. So if kids see adults being distracted crossing the street, being distracted in a vehicle, they're going to simply model that behavior because they think it's okay. So we have to put our phones down and we have to be those good role models. So when kids look at us, they see that we're practicing safe behaviors as well.
We all have roles to play when it comes to crosswalk safety. This school year, it might be a good idea to refresh your kids on why pedestrian safety is important. Always look before crossing the street, and don't be afraid to ask your favorite crossing guard for help. Our writer this week is Reagan Houston. Our studio producer is Jason Dickey. I'm Nancy Benson.
Radio Health Journal returns in just a moment.
2 new studies show that sensory impairment, such as hearing or vision loss, is connected to dementia risk. One of the studies, presented at the Alzheimer's Association International Conference in Los Angeles, shows that either a vision or hearing deficit increases the risk of developing dementia by 10% or more, and that impairment in both senses increases the odds much higher. Dr. Keith Fargo is Director of Scientific Programs and Outreach at the Alzheimer's Association.
Through these new research findings, we are beginning to learn that sensory impairments may also be associated with the increased risk of dementia, especially when there are several of them at the same time. But we need more research to see if correcting the sensory impairments can reduce dementia risk.
A second study looking at combined effects of the loss of smell, touch, vision, and hearing shows that even mild impairment in multiple senses is associated with an increased risk of dementia. Find out more at alz.org.
Paid non-attorney spokesperson Fierce Nakawati with principal office in Dallas, Texas. Attention landscapers and anyone working in the landscape industry. This is an important alert for users of the weed killer Roundup that have been diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. A California jury recently awarded $289 million to a landscaper who claimed Roundup gave him cancer. Roundup is the most widely used herbicide in the United States with billions of pounds applied each year. Farm workers and landscapers are at the highest risk of injury from exposure. Time is limited to file a claim. If you work with Roundup weed killer and were diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, don't wait. Call the Roundup Legal Helpline now. The number to dial is 800-208-0501. That number again is 800-208-0501. You could be entitled to significant compensation. If you've been exposed to Roundup and have been diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, don't wait. Call the Roundup Legal Helpline right now. 800-208-0501. That's 800-208-0501. Again, 800-208-0501. Call now.
Thank you for listening to Radio Health Journal, a production of MediaTrax Communications. If you enjoyed this broadcast, please support our show by subscribing, sharing it with a friend, and leaving a review on Apple Podcasts. You can find more Radio Health Journal stories about health, science, and technology on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, and RadioHealthJournal.net. Also, follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Radio Health Journal. Coming up next week on Radio Health Journal.
High school students, when we wake them at 6 a.m., for them, it's the biological equivalent of waking an adult up at 4 a.m. because their sleep cycles are shifted by about 2 hours.
The economic costs and benefits of changing school start times.
Then, dog bites.
Don't come out saying I think pit bulls are like AK-47s, but I would also say that there is some inherent danger when you have a dog as part of your family that is fairly strong, that could have some aggressive behavior when prompted.
All that and more on Radio Health Journal.